Hello and welcome to another edition of GOAZCATS.com Arizona football preview show. As always, I'm Troy Hutchison, joined alongside Arizona legend Joe Tafoya and Matt Moreno. Guys, last week, let's get into it. Arizona, they were right in the ball game, leading 16-7 in the fourth quarter on Washington's 28-yard line. And then Will Plummer throws a pick. And it's all Huskies from that point on. Arizona goes on to lose 21-16. Turnover, yet again, comes back to haunt Arizona.
I thought we had this one. I mean, there was, just over 6 minutes left to go in the game. I was thinking to myself, there's no way we can let this one slip through our fingers. And then some mental mistakes, some coaching, some questionable coaching. And there it goes again. Let me read you some headlines here in the Pacific Northwest. UW Huskies go from rock bottom to a rare road win with comeback victory. Unimpressive win at Arizona didn't impress voters. Huskies avoid epic defeat in Arizona. The hometown Wildcats let UW off the hook. I'm telling you guys, no one expected the Huskies to win in the state of Washington. Watching that game, it was just, the feeling was that they were down. They were going to stay down. There was no way they could come back. And to be honest, this one to me probably hurt more than all of the other ones. And not just because I'm here in the Pacific Northwest, but it was because we had a chance to win this game. And there was one crucial penalty that when it happened, I thought, well, that's it. And that was the substitution error on third down. And that's just, it's unforgivable. At this point in the season, after a timeout, it's an unforgivable mistake. And, even though we still stopped them and we got the ball back and we gave ourselves another chance, it's just one of those things that, you look back on the course of the season and it just feels like time after time we find ways to lose. Instead of finding ways to win, we're finding ways to lose. Here's a quick recap in case somebody didn't watch the game. We led with just over 6 minutes left to go in the game. Screen passed, intercepted, questionable call, I thought, you guys. Questionable call. Defensive lineman turns into a 51-yard play for the Huskies, then a touchdown. 3 and out. Could have gone for it on that 4th and 1, guys. I'm going to be honest. At this point in the season, a lot of people are questioning that we didn't go for that 4th and 1. We were deep in our own territory, maybe on the 37, but I thought maybe we should have gone for it. I mean, what do you have to lose at this point? Another long play, they take the lead, 3 and out, and again, defense hold them, and then there's the penalty. Only a couple of bright spots in my mind. We had some decent pressure on the quarterback. We had 4 sacks. We put together a few methodical drives, but too many mental mistakes cost us this game, you guys.
It was, I was listening to Troy kind of do our intro, and if you would have listened to maybe the last, 7 shows or whatever we've done, there's a common theme there where they have a chance, and then they didn't have a chance. It was just kind of the same story. I mean, to me, the defense looked like early in that game against Washington, it was playing better than I think it's played at any point this season. They were getting in the backfield. They looked way more aggressive, way more intense than I think I've seen at any other point this year. Looked ready for the challenge, and Washington looked like they didn't want to be there. And Arizona was, playing up to that and saying, no, like, let's bring it. Let's bring the intensity. And I thought you could see that early in the game, and they had the momentum. I thought they took the right approach in a lot of ways because if you go back to Will Plummer, they're keeping it safe. They weren't going too crazy with him, weren't having him take chances, letting him throw short passes, and just relying on that running game to provide the offense. And we're kind of keeping it safe. And you said, okay, this is probably the right game plan. You have Jamari Joyner in there doing some things and running the ball. And he was moving the offense a little bit. So it felt like everything was falling in place. The one thing you couldn't have was a big turnover, and they have it. And then you go to that penalty. I mean, those are the 2 things. You can point to those 2 things and say, that's what cost them the game. If you don't have those, you're talking about an Arizona win, I think. I think we're all talking about Arizona breaking the streak on this show right now if you don't have those 2 plays, which goes back to the point of Arizona just has no margin for error. They just don't have they can't afford those mistakes because they both came at crucial points in the game. If you don't get that penalty, you come up with a stop and you have 2.5 minutes left with, I think, a timeout still, an opportunity, probably gonna have decent field position, have an opportunity to go drive down. And they've looked pretty good when they've run with some tempo this season. When they run that 2-minute drill, they've looked pretty good offensively. And so just bad all the way around for Arizona in terms of those mistakes. I continue to come back to this. I don't think they're going to win a game until they play a completely clean game. You can't shoot yourself in the foot, can't have penalties, and they continue to have those issues come up, and it's costing them games. I mean, it's they should have won. I mean, I think, just to put it blankly, like Joe said, they should have won. This is not a game where Washington should have won this game. And I think, to all those headlines, escape and whatever else they said, I think that's true. I mean, that was an escape for Washington. They didn't deserve to win that game until they did, and Arizona just gave it right to them. And so a difficult game for Arizona. But I think the concerning thing is that a lot of the losses this season have felt very similar, and that's not good.
Yeah, and as we look at this game even in more depth, I mean, we could talk about the interception, the one crucial penalty on 3rd and 3, which Arizona gets to stop. I think that's the worst part about that penalty. You got to run the play and they get the stop, 12 men on the field. But let's go at the numbers here. I want to talk about the number 4 in the second half for Arizona. They allowed 4 plays of over 25 yards or more through the air, totaling up 159 yards through there on 4 plays. The defense played a tremendous first half, but yet again, they get killed by the big play. And then penalties. Over the last 3 games, Arizona's totaled 30 penalties for 217 yards. So, yes, we could all look at that one penalty, which was critical, but you can't get penalized 10 times in a ball game if you're Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you look at a lot of the games, there's a common thread through most of them, and that's, especially defensively, it's the explosive plays. That's just killing Arizona this season, and they really haven't been able to figure those out. I think every team, if you go down the list, has had at least a couple explosive plays, and until they can eliminate those, it's just they have to be better than what they have been, and they haven't been playing bad, but because the offense has been so lackluster and has not been providing the points that Arizona needs to win games, the defense has to be even better. And so if there's one thing you can point out to them that's been consistent this season that's been a negative, it is those explosive plays, and it's just continued to happen. And then the penalties are not helping anybody on either side of the ball.
Here's my opinion. And everybody knows what you can do with opinions, but this is mine. Jedd Fisch has already been given a hall pass for the year, but in my opinion, the excitement about him is gone. And we're starting to see some serious flaws in the offensive play calling. I think that the program at this point is going to be watching things very carefully through the end of the year and early into next year. They gave him a 5-year, $14 million contract, and they hired him under some very interesting circumstances. And look, I'm a Jedd Fisch fan. I really think that his excitement and, bringing what he's bringing to the table as far as recruitment has been phenomenal. It's been like one of the only positive things that's going on this season. But nationally, when you start looking at coaches that are on the hot seat right now, he went from being ranked number 24 on the hot seat. After this loss, he went to number 18 on the hot seat. What is your honest, truthful opinion about Coach Jedd Fisch being on the hot seat right now?
Personally, I think, again, if you get that NAU win, you don't lose to NAU, then you're not on the hot seat. Then it's, there's injuries, there's this, there's that. But you didn't. You lost NAU. The play calling was questionable. Throughout the season, we've seen some questionable play calls. If you don't get a win this season and you start off next season, let's say, I don't even know the schedule looking at it right now, but let's say you start off 0-5 next year. You're in some hot water. I don't know if you can survive that. And it's a big contract. They might be locked in, but you got to get a victory or two between now and then.
I don't think the seat is hot yet. I think it's starting to get uncomfortable, starting to get a little warm. I think if the recruiting aspect wasn't part of the equation, I think you could have more of a case. The fact that they now have, because of what's going on at USC is losing some commitments. Arizona has the number 3 ranked recruiting class in the Pac-12. Oregon and I believe Stanford are right ahead of them. And Arizona's kind of creeping up on Stanford for that second spot. So that's a big step forward from where Arizona was the last few years. They just haven't had a class like this in a really long time. And Jedd Fisch is doing that on the heels of what is now a 19-game losing streak. That's impressive. I mean, it really doesn't matter who you are. And I don't know that any other coach that they brought in would be able to do that. I mean, we don't know as you're speaking in, hypotheticals, but you don't know what, Brent Brennan or, Joe Salovey. I think we have an idea of how things would have went maybe with him recruiting wise, but some of these other candidates that were out there, Ken Niumatalolo, you don't know. You just don't know. But I have a hard time imagining most of the candidates on the list would have been able to do this recruiting wise, what Jedd Fisch is doing based on the circumstances, the losses, what he's had to kind of dig the program out of. So it's impressive. I don't think you can look past that. I think you have to give him credit for that because that is coming from him and the staff. They can't really point to anything else right now in terms of the team. They can just sell guys on playing time and, their connections to the NFL. They have a lot of coaches who have been in the NFL, have experience there. So that's something they can sell them on. But outside of that, there's not a lot other than the vision and their personalities. And so I think they deserve some credit for that. If you didn't have that aspect, I think this is more of a conversation, but obviously there's now time between we're recording this October 27th and December 15th, the early signing period when recruits can begin to sign. A lot of things can happen in between then. We've seen some of the commits start to get offers recently from other programs. That's going to continue. As some of these other schools around the country, Power 5 programs in particular, start to, lose out on the guys they really, were targeting pretty high, they're going to say, what's going on over at Arizona? They've lost 19 straight games. Let's check in with some of those commits and see if they're willing to maybe look around or at least talk to us. And I think that would be the fear right now if I'm an Arizona fan, is just get those guys signed. Because if you can get, this class signed, everyone that's already on board, you're on the right path. A lot of those guys are going to be coming in early. They're going to be on campus in January, going to be able to participate in spring ball. And we've seen over, the last couple of years and especially this last year, someone like Stevie Rocker, who's, taking a step forward, came in early, got that opportunity, kind of got his, got the kinks ironed out, early on in the spring, kind of worked out some of his issues during the spring, and he's ready to roll by the time training camp rolls around. So I think they're on the right path. I would probably entertain that conversation more and say there's some validity to him truly being on the hot seat if the recruiting element wasn't there. But I think because they are recruiting so well, better than any program would be in this exact situation, I think you have to say it's just kind of, to me, it's just kind of an uncomfortable seat right now. Maybe get a little bit warm. It's
a lukewarm seat that he's on right now. Okay, well, that's good to hear, and it builds a little bit more confidence moving forward, not just for me, but hopefully for the U of A fan base, because we could use something positive right about now. And
I think the thing you go back to, at least for me, kind of someone who covers recruiting, is you imagine what they could do when they actually start winning games, which I think if you give them time, they probably will. I mean, you are going to, infuse some younger talent, some talent of guys that they recruited themselves from start to finish, as opposed to just kind of picking them up at the end and trying to get them on campus. But I think it gives you a great starting point for when they actually do start winning games, because if you're able to do this now with a really extended 2-year-long losing streak, I think there should be a reason for optimism that these coaches can get the job done moving forward when they actually start to win some games.
You got that hometown feel about you, Matt. You're keeping things moving in the right direction for the hometown. I like it.
Arizona this week, they're going to be taking on USC in the Coliseum Saturday at 4 p.m. The series between the two schools has been kind of lopsided, with USC getting the better of Arizona 36-8 all time. The last win for Arizona came in 2012 with a 39-36 exciting victory in Tucson. I believe that was a top 10 upset for Arizona, number 9 USC at the time. Arizona has gotten them when they're ranked number 1 in the country. That's going back to 1981. Larry Smith's team went into the Coliseum, won 13-10. So there have been exciting moments for Arizona, more so for USC, but USC, they're not exactly in their usual state of program. They're right now 3-4, losers of 2 straight, and head coaching change from Clay Helton to Dante Williams. And USC has some issues right now, guys.
Yeah, they're coming off a big loss to cross division rival, I would call it, Notre Dame, 31-16. But here's a team that fired their head coach a month ago, and that was the reason I was looking into this earlier, and that was the reason why I started looking into like what is coachinghotseat.com. Of course they have that. Why wouldn't they? They have everything. But this is a big media city, and the focus right now is not on the team. It's not on the players. It's on who's going to be the next head coach. And, quietly, they have some of the most talented players in the division and maybe even in the country. And that's just standard for USC. When I hear you say that we haven't beaten them since 2012, that's a long time to get owned by a team. That's longer than Aaron Rodgers has owned the Chicago Bears. So this is going to be homecoming weekend for them. SC, regardless of who's in the coaching seat right now, I just think that they're far superior as far as talent goes. This is a team that they're just better than us. There's no other way to put it. They're just better than U of A. So I don't really see this going any other way, but I hope you guys have something different to say about it.
To me, this game feels a lot like last week in Washington, where they're struggling, but they still have the better talent in the end. And that's hard to overcome, especially when you're not playing well, as Arizona is not playing well at this point in this season. If Arizona was playing well and there's that talent disparity and you face a USC team that's struggling, then I think it's more of a conversation. But Arizona struggling and USC struggling are on two different levels. I mean, USC has the talent to make up for, struggling players. And so, and maybe a coaching deficiency. I think Dante Williams had high aspirations of being the next head coach and got a couple commits right away and kind of sold people on, hey, I'm going to be, the one in charge of this thing moving forward. And it's not going to happen. I mean, the way that things have unraveled there, it's not going to happen. But it feels very similar to last week. And so for Arizona, they're going to have to get over some of those hurdles. They can't do those things that they did last week against Washington because, again, you have to play a clean game. You can't hurt yourself because you don't have the talent disparity is too big. And so they can have an off day and still beat you pretty bad. Arizona can't. Arizona needs to have, a really strong day and have everybody kind of in top form. Can't have drops late in the game when you're trying to, inch your way closer to a Hail Mary attempt, because that'll be an issue. You can't have penalties where you send a guy on the field because you thought you saw something different. You have to clean that up. Can't throw interceptions. And so for Arizona, it has to be about playing the clean game. And USC has a lot of talent. The two Drakes, Drake London, Drake Jackson, very difficult matchups for Arizona. Those are going to be two key players to watch for USC. But I agree. I just think the talent disparity is too much for Arizona, that unless they play a clean game, it's going to be very difficult for them.
Yeah, I think, we all know USC, they can just walk on the field in terms of their talent and just have maybe the most talented team in the conference 8 out of 10 years, traditionally. I mean, they just have guys that they send into the NFL. They have guys behind those guys that are going to be NFL players. But for me, what really stood out about this USC team is their run defense. They've had a hard time stopping people on the ground, but they've faced Oregon State. They've faced Utah, two teams that run the football really well. Notre Dame runs the football very well. They've given up 151 yards on the ground with 13 touchdowns. So for Arizona, going into what we know about Arizona, Jamari Joyner is going to be a part of this offense. I don't think in the sense that the fans wanted him to be a quarterback, but in the sense of the Wildcat attack and spreading guys out and creating running lanes for his backs and himself. So Arizona, I mean, one of the keys to the game for them going into this matchup is going to be to run the football, and Jamari is going to be a big part of that. What did you see out of Jamari last week, Joe?
I think he's a dynamic player. I mean, it was exciting when he has the ball in his hands. Also, you get a little bit scared. You're not really sure what's going to happen. I wish I knew the game plan. I wish I knew what plays they were actually calling, because I felt like some of them didn't really go as planned. But, you want to put the ball in your playmaker's hands. And to me, Jamari Joyner is a playmaker, and let's let's capitalize on that. And all right, speaking of playmakers, Will Plummer, we've been down on him for, the last, I don't know how long, but he made some solid plays and, made a couple of crucial mistakes, but overall, I thought he managed the game very well. And I think he deserves another shot, another look. He's going to get that, obviously. And, in tandem with Jamari Joyner, I'm going to be interested to see what the game plan will be this week. I feel like we had some success running the ball. Will managed the game well. They gave him an easy, solid game plan, hand the ball off, throw short passes. And, I was down on him early on in the season, but he's what we got right now. So let's ride with him.
To Jedd, Joe mentioned exactly what I was going to say, which is, and quarterbacks hate this, but you don't want to be termed as a game manager, but there's been some really good game managers in the NFL who've had lengthy careers, just kind of being the guys who manage the game. And so I thought that's what the approach was with Will Plummer in that game, where it was just like, hey, we're going to give you some simple plays, just run them well. We're not going to make you take too many chances, protect the ball, and just, kind of let us run the offense a little bit and, lean on the running backs and lean on the running game and mix Jamari Joyner in there a little bit and just don't do too much. And so I thought he did a pretty good job of that for most of the game. And I want to go back to that call. You mentioned that was your criticism, I think, Joe, of the game plan was that screen pass call. Jedd Fisch has kind of stuck by that and said he believes through and through it was the right call. I think if you look at the film, defensive lineman kind of came out of nowhere. But what were your thoughts on just that play, and what's the better call in your opinion in that situation?
Well, of course, the coach is going to stick with his call. He made the call. Pete Carroll still sticks by the call that he made when the ball was intercepted on the goal line. The Seahawks were going to go in and win the Super Bowl. But that was a wrong call. And I feel like that was first, we've been running the ball with some success, putting ourselves in manageable situations. It did feel like the momentum was shifting and the defense had started to figure out our running game a little bit, and they were stopping them early, getting some penetration. So, maybe it was the right call. Maybe it wasn't the right call. It's really easy for us to sit here on Wednesday or Thursday and armchair quarterback. I feel like there was a much better play call in their grouping, but they didn't run it. And you're always going to wonder. You're always going to wonder, why didn't they run the ball?
And to me, I think the one thing that I've seen, that I've noticed, which it's going to be interesting to see how Will Plummer responds in this next game, because it feels like every starting quarterback they've had, Jordan McLeod, Gunnar Cruz, Will Plummer, they've all been really hard on themselves, and almost to a fault, where, Jordan McLeod in that 5 interception game, yes, it's brutal. You don't ever think you're going to have a game like that, but he was hanging his head, and he had poor body language. Gunnar Cruz, similar thing, where you can just see it on his face that, he's down on himself after making a bad play. Will Plummer is very similar. You can't have that. You need to have, right now, Will Plummer is the last line of defense here for their quarterback. I mean, there's no one else. They'd have to, I guess, go to Jamari Joyner full time, but it's his job. And so I think he has to find a way to battle back from those situations. And I think us in the stadium, you could just feel it. You could just feel it wasn't just the offense. You could tell the defense as well. It just took all the air out of the team when that happened. And as Jedd mentioned, there was that here we go again type of mentality, and they have to figure out a way to get over that. It's really difficult to get through that. And I think as the quarterback, Will Plummer has to kind of lead that charge. Yes, there's other leaders on the team, and we talked about leaders. Joe mentioned leaders last week and how you want those guys to emerge. But Will Plummer, I think, has to be that guy on the offense. There aren't a ton of veterans outside of the offensive line. A lot of those, offensive linemen are older, but they're not exactly super vocal either. So I think he has to be the guy that says, I made that mistake. Let's go back and, make the right play the next time and make up for it. But it'll be very interesting to see how he responds. But I do think, he played a pretty good game for the most part to stay out of trouble, and he has to build on that now.
And, Matt, you brought it up, the here we go again mentality that Jedd Fisch mentioned in his press conference. Joe, as somebody that played in football, I don't know if you've ever been a part of a team that had a little bit of that, but how do you get over that hump? How do you go from here we go again to it's okay, we got this?
Well, it starts in the locker room, there has to be a nucleus of guys. You touched on it, Matt. We got to remember, Will is only a freshman, so leadership takes time. It takes confidence. You have to build leadership inside of the locker room. When you're losing that many games, you've got guys in the locker room who haven't won in a very long time. It's hard to find your groove. However, I was on a team in Chicago that was 13-3. We go to the NFC Championship game. We lose to Philadelphia, Donovan McNabb. Phenomenal team, great team players. The next year, we were 3-13, the longest season of my entire life. And as things start to go bad, when you are looking for that leadership and it's not there, we had a guy named Jim Miller as our quarterback, and he was kind of a point the finger kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? Hang his head like what you're seeing out of some of our guys. If the leadership's not there, it just doesn't work. So, you look to your playmakers. I mean, where's Berryhill? We need for him to step up. I'm not sure how emotional or vocal he is, but he's a playmaker. And you have to have those guys in the locker room that you can look up to. McLeod's injured. Gunnar Cruz is injured. These aren't guys you can go to in the locker room because they're not there anymore. They're in the training room. As much as you want to rely on those guys for them to come in and still be part of the team meetings and everything, they're just not there. So the guys that are on the field, when you're battling with them, you need somebody to step up. We need a lot of things, but we need leadership most of all.
And going back to the point kind of that we were making originally, talking about Jamari Joyner, Joe was kind of mentioning some of the things. He mentioned dynamic and some of these other words, and it made me think of another guy that was dynamic that played the quarterback position for Arizona not too long ago. And when, Khalil Tate was running the show at Arizona, Jamari Joyner was still playing quarterback, was still in high school, went to watch him, and I said, there's some similarities there. I mean, you could see maybe a little bit better passer than Khalil in some instances. But it felt like Khalil light, if you want to call it that, where it was just like, there's some similarities, maybe not the explosive athlete like Khalil. I don't know that there are many like him, but some similarities where he said, I can see the comparison and how you could make the transition from one guy to the next and kind of keep things moving in that direction. And so if you have a weapon like that, I do think he adds quite a bit of value to this offense and what they want to do. And even if teams just have to get prepared for it, that's an advantage as well. But I think he's shown that he can come into the game and impact things. Kind of the only guy that can score touchdowns right now, it feels like. I mean, he's thrown for one, ran for one last week. So I think he has the tools to really impact the offense. I think the next thing that Arizona needs to do, whether they're just saying it to say it so they don't give away anything, feels like there's a little bit of hesitancy to kind of throw him out there and have him play a bigger, more quarterback-esque role. I think you do have to show teams, hey, he can throw the ball a little bit. Otherwise, they're just going to stack the box and try and stop him in the running game. I think you have to let him air it out a little bit. Maybe you don't have to go 50 yards down the field, but I think if you can, let him pass the ball a little bit and, get some mixed into the passing game a little bit, I think it'll help and keep defenses honest at least.
My wonder here is, where's Luke Ashworth in all of this? I mean, what is he, a sophomore this year? He's going to be one of my guys to watch, Troy. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that he's probably getting some reps. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that in the event of injury, even though Jamari Joyner will get the bulk of it, we're going to see Luke Ashworth. So, I mean, the idea that one guy can save our team, I mean, let's face it, that's not going to happen. We're too far down the road right now. But give Jamari Joyner the ball. When you're playing a video game, you want to put the ball in your best player's hands and let them run with it. Let's see if Coach Fisch plays video games.
So heading into this USC game, Arizona, in my opinion, they're going to have to win the battle in the trenches. I think you can say that a lot for a lot of football games. Get out of their own way. We mentioned it. Penalties, turnovers in big time crucial situations. They got to eliminate that. And then I know this is going to sound weird as we talked about the weapons at receiver, but make USC throw the football. If you can make them one-dimensional and shut down the run game, maybe your corners and safeties can make some plays, but if you make them one-dimensional, I think you stand a chance in the Coliseum.
My only key is stop Drake London. That guy's insane. He has way too many catches. Easier said than done. But if you can slow him down, I think Arizona is going to have a shot.
Keys to the game for me is very obviously one thing. It's the turnover battle. We haven't done very well on our turnover ratio this year, but it's never too late to start. The best season that we ever had was 12-1, and I was on that team. And let me tell you, the main focus starting at training camp, going all the way through the season, was turnovers. We were in the locker room. We were in the meeting rooms. We were always talking about turning the ball over, safety first on the ball. But we were always talked about turning the ball. Some of the best teams I've ever been on have found ways to remove that ball from the offense's hand, win the turnover battle. One final thought for me. I had a lot of friends that were at that game randomly, and they were all taking pictures of the stands. I didn't see 30,880 fans at Arizona Stadium. Where were they? Were they in the beer garden or what? Do they even serve beer over there? What was the game? What was the atmosphere like?
It was pretty dead, I would say. I think, they do serve beer, but I would say that might have been tickets sold more than attended. So I would almost say you could cut that in half. So.
Well, you can only go one way from here, guys.
So as always, thank you for joining us, you guys. Follow along as we will have updates throughout the week leading up to U of A versus USC in the Coliseum. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for live updates throughout the game and post-game recap and much, much more to follow. Thank you.